Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
My name is Linda, and I'm originally from Michigan, now living in the St. Louis metro area. I'm a college coach with School Match for You and have a daughter at University of Chicago.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of two daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy is a graduate of the University of Georgia, and she is getting her master's degree at North Carolina State University. Good morning, friends. I come to you on Father's Day. A special shout out to all the fathers out there who are great mentors for their sons and daughters, setting the course for the next generation. Hope you have a fantastic day. Of course, it'll be over by the time you hear this. Hope you had a fantastic day, and just want to thank you for your contributions. So we have a very special episode today. Two of our co-hosts, of our 7 co-hosts, 3 counting me, you're going to hear from. So I'm doing something a little different. I had a couple people this week that reached out to me very concerned about the fact that their student had a very bad grade in the 9th grade. And in one case, it was 2 bad grades. Another case, it was 1. And they weren't Fs, but subpar grades. And they wanted to know, is there hope? So I decided to do something a little creative. And Julia and I are going to have a conversation about just how much does 9th grade count in the evaluation by colleges. And then secondly, you're going to hear from Linda, who has literally put in over 100 hours of volunteer work in the last 6 months, helping us improve the Your College Bound Kid website. So she'll be on to talk about the upgrades that have occurred with the brand new version, which is now live. We're very excited about it. I want to say a word about our podcast partners, those who give, those who support our podcast. I'm not sure if you're giving because you want us to stay commercial free. I don't know if it's just you believe in supporting causes you believe in, or you want to help us expand or encourage us. Not sure what the motivation is, but it was your contributions that paid for more than half of the costs of the website upgrades. And I just really want to thank you for that. I also want to thank everybody who is mentioning us on social media. I just looked at our stats for the month of June, and we smashed our record again, over 43,000 downloads for June. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I think a lot of that is social media. And the reason why I say that is a lot of you, when you reach out, you'll mention where you found us. And also, we can also do analytics and see where people come to the website from. And I'm seeing like groups like DC Moms, DC Prep Moms, I believe it is, in the Washington area. A lot of moms get together and talk about college. We get a lot of activity from there. We also get a lot from College Confidential and from groups like Paying for College 101 and other Facebook groups as well. Plus, just all over. And thank all of you who are putting the word out about our podcast in social media, because it really is where a lot of listeners say they found us. And I also want to shout out one other person, Kim Barber. She's a fantastic college counselor in the Raleigh area I've gotten to know over the last few years. She's someone who really puts students first in her perspective and her approach to college counseling. She's a regular member of our listening family. She's a podcast partner who supports our work. And I meant to shout her out because she treated Lisa and I to a lovely lunch back in May when we were in Raleigh. And it's just people like Kim that just inspire us to keep on keeping on. We'll go from my segment with Julia to my segment with Linda to the final part of Elliot Felix interview with Lisa about his book, How to Get the Most Out of College. But without any further ado, I want to dive into my conversation with Julia about just how much does the 9th grade really count. So, friends, we have a special guest today. It's the first time Julia's been on a Monday episode. Hi, Julia.
Hi, no Sunday scaries here because I am out of school.
So I wanted Julia to be my thought partner on an exercise I've been going through. It's a question I sometimes get. I recently had it from a New Jersey family. They were very, very concerned because their student who had been straight A's had transferred to they'd gone from a public to a private school. It was way harder. He tested into advanced algebra 2 and they didn't go well. And he was advised to go in there, but he got in there, he had gaps, and so the grade wasn't great. And so they just scheduled a single session with me to find out how detrimental is this going to be for his college prospects, the fact that he got this low grade. And this led me to invite Julia to join me to kind of have a conversation with you about how colleges read applications backward, putting more emphasis on what's more recent. And so I asked Julia a question, which I'm going to ask her now, and I'll share, we'll just have this conversation. And this is a question I asked her. Julia, if you were to divide all the grades up into 3 different groups, 11th and 12th is one category, 10th is its own category, and 9th is its own category. And you were to be given a chart with 100%, and you had to apportion how much emphasis on just the academic reading you feel goes to 11th, 12th versus 10th versus 9th. And I have to give a few caveats saying, we know not all schools are the same. In fact, you can even talk about schools that just don't read holistically and read by numbers. But why don't you share with our listeners what you said, and I'll share what I said, and I'll just let you guys kind of hear a conversation on that.
Sure. So for my schools that I much more appreciate that look at grade trends rather than one GPA for maybe 3 years and maybe the next quarter of your senior year, I have overwhelmingly found that way more emphasis is placed on the junior year and senior year, 11 and 12. Important to note that sometimes by the time you apply, you have very few grades for 12th grade. And sometimes my students get caught up and they're like, oh, but I got all A's in the first quarter. I'm like, but that's 25% of 1 year. But to your point, Mark, that I find that obviously the more recent work is more important. Also, students have likely kind of come into their own as a high school student. You might be in more appropriate classes at that point. So I estimate around maybe 70% for 11th and 12th grade, maybe 20% for 10th grade, and 10% for 9th. As a little anecdote here, my school, Milton Academy, this is our 3rd graduating class that don't get 9th grade grades. Because we were seeing that, similar to your student, Mark, that even if you came from my middle school, it was just a huge uptick in rigor. And that some of our highest achievers were still not getting grades. And actually, research shows it can be difficult for a student to dig themselves out of some lower grades because then they start to see themselves as maybe that kind of student. So mentally, it does not do well. However, the point of that was to show that you're not just yet the student that you're going to be when you apply to college. And it has helped our students increase not only sort of their chances of getting into college, but also our scholarship recipients have gone up. And before that, I had one of my favorite students of all time. She had a terrible 9th grade year when we had grades. She had all C's. And guess what? She got mostly all A's, a few B's since. And she got into her dream college because they were able to see 9th grade was a blip. She was figuring it out. And I remember she had applied to Ohio State early action. And I remember talking to our rep and asking them, we're going to change the policy here where there won't be 9th grade grades. And Ohio State Ohio State. I forgot about that.
Arrow in my back there. Their hubris can be very nauseating for me as another Big Ten fan.
Yes. The rep at the time was really disappointed we were going to have that, because they cited the student and said, then how could I see that this student actually did really dig themselves out and really has an arc in their learning and an arc in their achievement? So that's just, those are two sort of stories that go to show, or at least for me, that ninth grade really does have a very small piece in the overall 4-year experience, and 10th grade being right behind that. And then really the emphasis being on what are you doing now, maybe a year before you, or a year and a half before you come to us, which is much more indicative of who you are as a student.
Yeah. And just so you know, I gave my apportionment very, very close to Julia. So we both agreed 70% 11th and 12th. I say 25% 10th and 5% 9th. So we're almost identical. Obviously, this is subjective. The only caveat I would give, going back to what Julia said, when schools have making decisions, whether it's rolling admissions or early decision or early action without any 12th grade grades at all, then I would say, you know, a 60, 30, 5, 10, you know, like that.
Sure.
Our regular listeners know I really like Becky Sabke's book, Valedictorians at the Gate. She was 13 years at Dartmouth, became director of international admissions at Dartmouth. She says in her book, in my 13 years at Dartmouth, we never denied a kid one time for their 9th grade academic transcript.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, and let's explain why. You know, part of it is what you've done more recently is just a better reflection of where you are now. It's the same reason why Julia and I say don't go get a teacher to give a recommendation from a 9th grade.
Yes.
Right? So 12th, 11th, 10th, 9th was just so long ago. We have enough information with that 2.5 years. Also, I get to see how you handle higher level work, you know, in 11th and 12th or you know, or even 10th. So that's another factor. And then the other point that Julia brought up is really important. College is very much aware of transitions and people having transitions, oftentimes social, but oftentimes into very different academic environments, you know, transitions. Plus, colleges are aware of the fact, particularly with boys, that they mature later. We used to say this all the time in boarding school, Julia, like, he's just a 9th grade boy. Wait till he gets in 10th.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
You know, so all of these things are reasons why if your student has not had a great 9th grade, it is unlikely to adversely impact you. You know, it really is, unless you are applying to a school that is not reading holistically, that is just looking at a 4-year GPA and is just turning you into a number. And schools that do that are pretty explicit about that. You can look at their admissions criteria. It's not generally something they hide from you. You know, that's when you'll see that. But grade trends really matter a lot to colleges. It's a big deal. That's a huge part of the transcript review. And I always tell people there's 2 good grade trends, consistently high and upward. There's 3 bad ones, always low, the roller coaster, and the downward trajectory. So you're in one of the 2 categories of positive grade trends. And, you know, in fact, there are a lot of schools that explicitly come right out and say that they don't look at the 9th grade at all when they recalculate.
Yeah.
Stanford,
University of California system.
Yeah, University of California and Stanford are a couple that they don't even look at the 9th grade in their GPA calculations. You know, they have enough information from what happens past then. They can let 9th grade be a transition year. You know, so now here's the other side of what Julia and I are talking about. 11th grade's really important. So you get that slack on 9th. But if 11th doesn't go so well and you're looking at more highly selective schools, depending on how bad it goes, you really might need to change your college list. Because you kind of can't have it both ways. Oh, we get all this grace in 9th. Doesn't necessarily apply to 11th. But of course, there's so many schools out there that accept 80% of applicants and 70% and 90%. It may be a non-factor for them. We're talking about, you know, more highly competitive and highly selective schools. It factors in. So the bottom line, thanks for our special guest, Julia, joining today.
Thank you.
don't be too stressed out if ninth didn't go well. Now's the time to kick it up. I've even seen cases, Julia, for some pretty selective schools where first semester 10th had hiccups.
Yep.
I think schools really differentiate between first semester 10th and second semester 10th, because sometimes from second semester 10th, they still have either a solid year and a half to, if you're applying after January, if they have access to, let's say it's a regular decision applicant, you have the full first semester 12th, they can still have 2 full years of records.
Right.
There as well. Of course, with 10th, it gets a lot more dicey, especially when you're getting into highly rejective and low admit schools. Because, at that point, you're up against such competition that.
Right. They're looking for anything.
Yeah, they're looking for anything but anyway, this was designed to be a dose of encouragement. And I just was curious what Julia would say. And our numbers came down almost exactly the same, 70, 20, 10, 70, 25, 5, as far as the 11th, 12th versus the 10th versus the 9th. So thanks for your cameo appearance. I'm going to have you back.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
Awesome. So friends, the next person you're going to hear is Linda Depker talking about changes in our website. Friends, this is a special Monday episode. You already got Julia, and now you get Linda. So you get 3 co-hosts today. And I'm excited to have Linda here because she has been working assiduously on our new updated website. And I swear she put over 100 hours in of her time. And co-hosts don't get paid. We do pay our support staff, but our 7 co-hosts is all volunteer work. So I think you're going to really like the changes, and Linda's here to talk to us about them. Take it away, Linda.
Well, good morning, Mark. And it has been a lot of work, but I have to tell you, there were a lot of people involved with this. So shout out to Stylianos and our web designer, Shaw, and everyone who helped. But
they're getting paid. You're doing volunteerism.
Well, that's true, but I am very excited. This has been a long time coming, so I'm very excited that we launched the new look of the Your College Bound Kid YCBK website. And, it's still the same good information that everyone is used to, but I think it's going to be a lot easier to navigate and to find.
So if somebody has never been to yourcollegeboundkid.com, which based on our survey, about 30% of you have literally never been there. You just use your phone app. Talk to the listeners about some of the things they would get on the website that they really wouldn't get on their phone app.
Yeah. So first of all, you can still get all of the episodes on the website. They're all there. And also the transcripts. So transcripts for all the episodes are there, which makes it easy sometimes if you want to search, like, I know I heard this on the episode where you talked about demonstrated interest, and you can do a search that way. Our interviews are all here. And then what I really like about the interviews is on the podcast, our interviews usually get spread out over 2 or 3 episodes.
Or 4.
Or 4. But on the website, you can listen to those interviews in one shot. So they don't get posted on the website until the interview is complete on the podcast. So there is a bit of delay, but then you can just go directly to that interview, which makes it nice.
And I would say the exact same thing is true for college spotlights, which are oftentimes 2-parters. But if you don't want to do part 1, part 2, or go search and find where it is on an app, it's going to be played in its entirety. And once again, those will go up after the spotlight has been completed. And sometimes there's a bit of a delay, but we do get them all up there. Now, so far, we've just talked about things that already were true before. Immediately when you go on, I remember when we were, had staff meeting and you demoed it for Lisa and she was like, wow. So immediately you'll notice a whole completely different new look. Talk to us about that.
It's a brighter look and much easier to navigate, I think. So you'll get to see, the color scheme that kind of matches the graphics that we've used in the past. The graphics are a little bit different. So it just kind of more of a thematic. One of the things that I really like about this now is the resources. And we have seen consistently that when people do visit the site, that they go to the resources page. And now it will be much easier to get around and find things that you're looking for. So rather than just one long page of resources, we have books, websites, other resources, and then they are categorized by paying for college, admissions, parents, testing information, health and wellness. So it makes it, again, just easier to find what you're looking for.
And Linda's being awfully kind, but I'll share with you all the backstory. I'm a bit of a pack rat, so I wanted all these headers at the top, and Linda and Shaw were fighting me for a cleaner look, and they eventually persuaded me, let's get rid of some of these titles we don't have to have, and I have to admit their idea was better than mine. So it looks cleaner and neater and not quite as jammed as it once did before. There's some other things on the website that people, when they find them interesting. You know, one of them is bios of everybody. We had somebody write in and comment on that this week. I read the bio. I didn't know, blah, blah, blah. Like, so, you know, if you kind of want to know a little bit more about the people you're listening to, you've got bios up there. I do want to go back to what Linda said about the transcript. The nice thing about the transcript, if you hit the search bar and you click any word, some word, you're driving your car and you heard a word and you don't remember where it was, but you want to go back, it will take you right to that spot. It will highlight it. And if you click, it will start playing right from that spot. So there are some, you know, that's a kind of really unique feature that can come in really handy if you heard something you liked and you want to go back and hear it, but you don't feel like listening to the whole episode to find it again. Of course, we have the blog, which has, what would you say, how many, maybe 30 plus articles up now? Somewhere around that, Linda? Close?
Oh, yeah, somewhere around that. You know, that is always a work in progress. Everyone contributes to that. So lots of good information on there. Also under resources, Mark, is the listener survey.
Yes.
So that is still up. And if you haven't taken that, we encourage you to do so. Feel free to go out there. It's short, but it gives us a lot of information. It helps us tailor the podcast to what listeners want. And our interviewers find it interesting. We can share that with them. And it's pretty impressive when they hear about our awesome listeners.
Yeah, I have consistently heard from interviewees that we've provided more information for them than any other, you know, guest appearance that they've had on podcasts or any other opportunities, because we take all of the listener survey and digest it into a report and send it to them before an interview, and they know exactly who their listeners are, who our listeners are, and who they're speaking to. And it really makes a world of difference if you're doing a podcast, if you know who the listeners are. And you say, well, what do you mean? Well, we have information on there on geography, from international countries to state breakdowns of how many listeners we have. We have age breakdown. We have race breakdown. We have income breakdown. We have gender breakdown. We have a breakdown of what listeners most like to hear in the podcast. So there's a lot of really good information.
Two other things on the website I want to point out. You can subscribe to the YCBK Plus newsletter. And then also you can visit our SpeakPipe page where you can ask a question or leave a message for anybody on the team or any of our interviewees in your own voice. And we love to receive those.
And just so you know, if you do leave a message for an interviewee, we'll send it to them. We've had a couple messages come in for Arlene Cash, and sent them to her, caught her at a time where she really could use that encouragement. It really made her day. So if you feel inspired to do that, we'll be your emissary and delivery person and transmit that for you to them. this was all I really wanted to have our listeners know, but I do want to leave everybody with a challenge. We're going to ask you to go to yourcollegeboundkid.com and spend at least 2 minutes poking around to see the new website, or for some of you, the first time, just because we think there's a lot of value there that you can't get off of the phone app, off of Apple or Spotify, or however you listen. So check it out and decide for yourself. But thanks for coming on, Linda.
And I'll just say, any typos, be kind, be gentle, let me know, but be patient with me.
Yeah, Linda's email is listed, I believe, under there. Is it, Linda? Is it under your bio? Did I see it there? Yeah,
it sure is.
So just send any typos or feedback directly to Linda. She's been spearheading this project, and she's been working on it for more than 6 months. So it's been quite the endeavor. So,
oh my gosh,
time flies when you're having fun. You know how that is. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, in part 2 of Lisa's interview with Elliot Felix, Elliot talks about the perfect flywheel that lets students maximize the value of college. Elliot shares his view on internships, and he shares some Gallup research on internships. Elliot also talks about the value of the alumni office, an underutilized resource for students and parents. And Elliot talks about what colleges can do to remove barriers and make it easier for students to excel while in college. And of course, our tradition, Elliot goes on the hot seat in our lightning round. Listen and enjoy.
I think if people feel supported, if they feel connected to the school, they're much more likely to come back, even if sometimes the academic problems are, there. They feel like they can persevere, they'll want to, because they're connected to the community. I hope that students, if you are listening, or parents, one of the major focuses of that first year is finding your people. That's almost more important than getting A's, is finding your people and making those connections that are going to sustain you throughout college.
That sense of belonging is really critical, and closely related to it is feeling supported. And in addition to all the academic support that I mentioned, writing, data, presentation, library information, there's also a range of non-academic support out there that may come through, the RA in your residence hall, could be counseling, could be peer mentoring, could be from talking to faculty, going to office hours, could be through events, meeting people that you attend at an event, or it could be those same centers. If you're a student veteran or a student parent or a first-gen student or an LGBTQ plus student, there are places on campus to help you find not only community but support. And so I think about those as kind of going together, and it's a really nice, if you can get the flywheel going between I feel like I belong, I feel supported, and I see how my classes might connect to a career. If you can get that flywheel turning, that's really how you get the most out of college.
Yeah, it's like the perfect trifecta of support and engagement. And then one way that people also try to, once you have that flywheel going, you have an interest, you're going to want to find internships and pursue those. So what suggestions do you have for students about that?
Well, I think internships are one of the highest return on investment activities in college. And that is because they give you a chance to explore career paths and to connect some dots, right back to that whole design thinking mindset, like it's about making connections. So they give you a chance to connect maybe a skill you were building or something you were learning about in the classroom in a real world setting. They give you a chance to test that, that other big idea about design thinking, test out what this career might be like. And we know from Gallup's research that students who complete internships are, I believe, 1.8 times more likely to be engaged at work after graduation, meaning they feel a a connection and a commitment to their company and what they're doing or their organization. So internships are so important, and there's lots of ways to go about getting them. The Career Development, Career Services Office is a great way to do that because they can help you explore potential careers, identify potential internships, look at your LinkedIn profile, get you on Handshake to find the internships. The Alumni Office is also a great place to go because that office is all about connecting students with alums, and those alums have companies that need interns. And I think the other thing is your professors or your teaching assistants, because they may have ideas about what's happening in practice, especially if you're in a professional school, if you're business or law or architecture or engineering. They may have industry connections. So I think it's such an important thing, and there's lots of ways to pursue it. But I think thinking about faculty, thinking about alumni, thinking about Career Center as three places to go is a good place to start.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you. So the kids in my family, I don't think they've done all of this. Do you feel like COVID has had a chilling effect on some of these activities? So we could joke about Generation C. How do you think that the pandemic has affected kids' ability to engage in services? And do you think that's going to change over time?
Well, I think to take advantage of these kinds of services and to capitalize on these opportunities, first you have to know about them. Then you have to feel comfortable using them. And I think COVID hampered both of those things, right? It limited your awareness of everything that your college offered. And yes, there are virtual career fairs. Yes, there are virtual student activity fairs, where if it was on campus, you'd be walking around a gym or on the quad to different tables, and you'd discover things, and maybe you're a little shy, so you go with a friend, find that outgoing friend that's maybe okay starting the conversation, or as you think about those happening over Zoom or online in other ways, it's a lot harder to get that, to get that big picture view, to get that serendipity of discovering something, to go with a friend. So I think COVID made it harder to become aware of everything that was out there. And I think in terms of being comfortable, like putting yourself out there, asking for something, participating in something, I think COVID set us all back a little bit on that kind of ease of interaction front. I know it certainly did for me. I feel like the first time we started having people over to we started having neighbors over for dinner, it was incredibly awkward. Where do I stand in my own house? Or you think about the first time you went to a grocery store during COVID, something that you used to take for granted that you could almost do on autopilot became this unbelievably stressful experience of cataloging where you were walking and how close you were getting and who was touching what, and oh my gosh, is that person coughing? And so everything became, the social activities became harder, and the kind of mental stress and challenge of it became harder. But I think while that certainly set us back in awareness and in comfort, I think those are things that you can combat, with practice and with exposure. And I think about several of the tips actually in my book have to do with advocating for yourself. And I think people have learned, for instance, in healthcare, that you have to advocate for yourself. Doctors are amazing, nurses are amazing, but they're people, they make mistakes. They might forget to ask a question. They might make assumptions. I mean, when I was younger, I had a doctor misdiagnose something in my leg that, it presented as a textbook something and turned out to be anything but. And it was only because like we got a second opinion that I ended up like not having my foot get cut off because this thing was totally misdiagnosed. In the same way that people realize they have to advocate in healthcare, so too in education. And one of the great tips in my book, I actually reference Chris Voss, who's this famous negotiation expert. Used to be like a hostage negotiator, I think, for the FBI, and he wrote a book called Never Split the Difference. And one of the things he talks about in that is practice on low stakes negotiation, just like ask for an upgrade, on a flight, ask for a free refill on a drink, things where they're probably going to say no, but it gets you in the habit of asking for something you may not get, but you're not going to get it unless you ask for it.
I think that's such great advice. And I love your model of thinking about school as a place where you have to advocate for yourself, just as you do in the hospital, or I suppose in a hostage situation. And that it would be something that would help kids counteract COVID. And I think that would be really great for them. And I love that. And I'm also glad that your foot's okay, because that sounded super scary.
Yeah, I am too. The first doctor was like, hey, just wear this compression sock. And then the second doctor was like, you need surgery right away. Turned out he was right.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of second opinions. Do you think there's anything that colleges can do to help kids know better what kinds of things are available to them? I know you've been consulting with schools. What kind of strategies can colleges do to reach out?
Well, I think one thing that a lot of colleges are doing well now, one thing that colleges can do to help students build this awareness and this comfort is really take full advantage of peer-to-peer programs. And they're getting really good at this. I think colleges over the last few years have realized that students get most advice from other students because another student is more approachable. They've just, they're in your shoes or they've just been in your shoes. And so most of these services that I've talked about, there is a version of it where it's trained students or upper level students helping students. So there are peer advisors, there are peer mentors, there are peers that work in the library, there are peers that work in the writing center, there are peers that work in the stats lab. And so I think one thing that colleges can do is keep on this trajectory of helping students to help other students. And I think students can also take advantage of that by using a peer advisor, using a peer mentor, using a peer presentation coach. And while they may not have the same expertise of somebody who's spent their career doing it, they've got training, they've got experience, and they know when and how to call in the expert when it's something that's over their head. Like, if you're talking to a peer advisor and you're having a real mental health challenge, they know how to get you in touch with the counseling center. So I think using the peers is so important. And what students can do is take advantage of that, but also think about the network and the community you're a part of and that you're building while you're in college, and make sure it's not just full of people like you and people who know what you know, but people who are different from you and know things that you don't, because that's really how you get a lot of help. I remember one student I interviewed for my book was an international student, and she, going to school in a different country was a huge change. It's a huge change for everyone. When it's a different country, it's an even bigger change. She felt really comfortable with other international students, especially from her country. But quickly she realized, like, oh, we all know the same thing. So how am I gonna branch out? Like, how am I gonna talk to people that have not just the same problems, but have some solutions? So she joined a club sports team. And in doing that, she met some people who were international students who knew the lay of the land a little bit better, who were a couple years ahead of her. And they ended up, studying together, becoming friends. They helped her out. She helped them out. And so I think it's using the mentors. It's meeting people who have more and different experience than you. And that's how I think that's one way you get over these problems of awareness and comfort, asking for help.
Yeah, and I suppose that's partially why maybe like being in a hall style dorm or being in a living learning community, it's sort of, you can't just self-select and be with people just like you all the time. And you can't isolate from people who aren't like you. You're sort of forced to interact with them. And then once I think that happens, people realize, oh my gosh, this is really interesting. This person's different from me and they can teach me things. But, human beings I think they're not intuitively designed to seek people who are different from them. They are designed to seek people who are like them. And, so this college, that's one of the advantages of college is it helps you overcome that and become more comfortable being around people who are different. So you've given such great advice for students. And I think that anyone who follows your plan will be a superstar in college and in life. What can parents do to help their kids follow your plan?
Well, I think, parents, fortunately or unfortunately, can't go to college for their kids, but they can ask really great questions to help lead them down a path, right? So they can ask, like you did, like, you're looking for a job, have you been to the Career Center? So I think it starts with parents can become familiar with what their school offers. That starts on the college tour. It continues through an orientation. It can happen at a fall break. It can happen online. But I think you can gain awareness about what the opportunities are. You can also gain awareness about what are the proven tips for success. It is things like mentoring, finding a mentor, doing an internship, experiential learning projects where students are working on a project with a real client, really, leading an organization. So these are all things that once you as a parent are aware of them and aware of the impact that they're likely to have, then I think you can be asking questions that might lead the witness a little bit or plant a seed. I think if you tell them, go to career services, might not be as well received as like, hey, have you gone to the Career Center? Like, they could help you practice your interview, or they could help you work on your resume or your LinkedIn profile. Or, hey, have you gone to the library? They can actually help you on your portfolio of projects on your website. So I think become aware, understand the impact, and then ask those, I'm not going to call them leading questions, but maybe some guiding questions that maybe point students toward resources. And I think the last thing you can also do is make some connections, and I think or help them make some connections. So you might have, if they have an interest, you might have an idea about a potential career or someone who has that career that you might be able to then say, here's a person you could ask about an informational interview. I would not try and set it up for them. I always decline those. When a parent is like, hey, can my son or daughter interview you about X? I say, sure, if they contact me. But yeah, I would become aware, would understand the impact. I would ask the guiding questions, and where you can help them connect some dots, go for it.
Well, that's great advice. And I think that you are absolutely right. Telling your teenage child or your college age child to do something directly usually leads to the opposite result. So I like your subtle approach. What can we as college counselors, because a lot of our listenership is composed of college counselors, what can we do to help students focus not just on where they're going, but how they're going to college?
That's a great question. And I think in a way, you almost answered it, because I think if we could spend more time thinking about the where based on the how, I think we could really help students find their best fit college or their best fit set of colleges to research and apply for. And what I mean by that is having discussions about the kinds of things they might do in college will then help them pick the right one. So for instance, if someone's really interested in experiential learning, they're really motivated by that, like applying something, doing it in a real world setting. Maybe they want to go to a college that's really focused on co-ops, like a Northeastern or a Cincinnati. If for instance they're focused on a specific industry, maybe maybe the location matters, and helping them understand they want to go into government, probably need to look at DC. So I think thinking about the how, the what they want to do in college, should give us like a more rich portrait of the best where.
I really love that way of putting it. I'm definitely going to apply that more with my students more explicitly in terms of trying to help them figure out what is the best fit for them in terms of what their goals are. Well, this has been great, but that no guest on Your College Bound Kid gets to leave without being on the hot seat and telling us just a little bit about yourself. So I would love to know what you would want to do, like as an alternate career, if you weren't doing what you're doing now.
I think I would be an organizational psychologist. My work gets into that, and it's so much about understanding the ideal future experience for a student, for a faculty member, for a staff member. But then there's a whole lot of organizational change that needs to happen in order to make that happen. And I feel like if I could do it all over again, maybe I would end up as an organizational psychologist to really like double down on the people side of things.
Well, I think organizations could definitely benefit from your expertise on that based on what I've seen. So where's your dream trip? Where's your bucket list trip that you really want to go to, but you haven't been able to get to yet?
My wife and I have been talking about going to Iceland for like 10 years. So I guess it's Reykjavik and maybe a tour around the whole deal. And we're not too far off from that. Our kids are 4.5 and 7, and I feel like we could probably pull it off next year. So maybe next year our dream trip will come true.
Yeah, that's on my bucket list as well. I think it sounds amazing, and I hope you guys get to go. Now, what are you watching on TV? What's your Netflix binge or other streaming binge? What's your favorite show right now?
Well, my guilty pleasure or my escape is what I call movie books. Page turners that are basically like action movies on a page. So the David Baldacci books, the Jack, the lead child Jack Reacher books, the Orphan X books. That's probably 60 or 70 books right there that I've read, and many of them several times. And now the Reacher series is on Amazon, and it's been long enough since, we watched it all like the first weekend. I think it came out last year, but it's been far enough back where we can watch them again. So now we're watching the Reacher series for the second time and enjoying it. A little violent, but quite an intriguing character.
Well, I'll have to check that out on a day that I am feeling a little bit brave. I just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You have so much good advice, and I love the way that you think about how students should go to college. I think it's a real paradigm shift. I hope that every student from here on out follows your advice. Where can people find your book if they want to delve into this a bit further?
The best place is Amazon.com, and we can put a link in the show notes. But on Amazon, you'll find lots of reviews. I think it's 4.7 out of 5, and you can hear not just what I have to say, but what other people are saying about it. And I think in addition to the book, on my website ElliotFelix.com, that's where I post podcast episodes. That's where articles I've written, talks I've given, and that's also where all my social media feeds are linked. So I put a lot of tips out on social media, graphically, videos. So that's another way to kind of sample the content, or sometimes it's a little more student friendly. Might be that they watch a 90-second video on TikTok and then see that maybe this book is worth diving into. And brightspotstrategy.com is where you can learn about all the consulting work I do.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on. I know people are going to find this really helpful, and I really appreciate you taking the time to explain some of this to us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's my mission is to help make college work for all students, and so they can get the most out of it. And I'm really passionate about sharing what I've learned, and I hope it's helpful for your listeners, students and parents and counselors alike.
I'm sure it will be. Thank you so much.
On Thursday's episode, my brother from another mother, Dave, is in the saddle with me. We're going to be looking at how sky-high real estate costs around colleges are creating affordability problems for students who live off campus. It's a Washington Post article. Our question from a listener comes from Lisa, not our co-host Lisa, another Lisa. She wants to know, how do you know if your student is overrepresented? Our Lisa will continue her interview with Dr. Lewis Newman on his outstanding book about the importance of critical thinking in college. That'll be part 3 of 4. And Lisa and I will have our final part of our interview of our spotlight on High Point University. Friends, a lot of people are going to tell your student where they should go to college. But it's your student who is going to receive the benefits if they pick the right place for them. It's also your student that will experience the consequences of a bad decision. That is why it is important to remember that college is not a prize to be won, but a match to be made. See you on Thursday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you'll get every single episode as soon as it is released. If you're interested, there are a few ways you can really support our podcast. You can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can help us pay our staff and our expenses by donating on our website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. I'm the producer of the podcast, but we have a fantastic team of 15. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff, Dr. David Williams, Linda Depker, Susan Tree, Vince Garcia, and Julia Esquivel. And to our substitute co-host, Sylvia Borgo. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs are from Kimberly Blass. Lily Parikh manages our Instagram. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Joy Stucker does our website episode updates. And our webmaster is Stalianos Dimitriou. And if you want to have a coaching session with Lisa, Linda, or me, just text me at 664-4340. If you have a question you want us to answer, or if you have a recommended resource or article you think we should discuss, just send it to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Our favorite method is for you to record your own voice at speakpipe.com/YCBK. By the way, check out our website, where you'll find lots of content that is not on any podcast app. Our website is yourcollegeboundkid.com. If you want to learn about other hot admissions topics, follow us on Twitter at YCBK Podcast. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting again with you every single Monday and Thursday.